Welcome to the Empower Her podcast. I'm Deanna, an ex-corporate manager turned certified coach, empowering you to create the life of your dreams. My goal is to guide you and support you in understanding what you really want in life, what steps to take to get there, and learn to actually enjoy the ride. Whether you are climbing the corporate ladder, a stay-at-home parent, or an entrepreneur, I coach you on how to believe you are worthy of a balanced, happy, and energetically positive life in work and at home. My goal in this podcast is to help you recognize patterns, implement change, and use your energy for positivity within yourself and your own life. I believe you don't have to suffer in this lifetime. You can create a life on your terms based on what you want, regardless of what that looks like. It is about reframing your beliefs, letting go of negative thoughts, and looking at your life as a set of opportunities there for you. I'm so excited to get started. Hello, and welcome back to the Empower Her podcast. Let me ask you, are you masking at work? It's a good question. So, what is masking? Okay. So, masking is when you metaphorically put a mask on at work and pretend to be or hold traits or certain characteristics that you don't actually naturally have as a way to fit in or blend in to the environment that you're in, right? So, it's like it's a defense mechanism. You're putting on a mask so that you can pretend to be or have certain character traits that you don't actually have. This is super common with neurodivergent individuals. I will say it's not just with neurodivergent individuals, but it tends to be more common with neurodivergent individuals. And again, this is a coping mechanism to move through the world and work, right? So I really want to talk today about masking, why it's a problem, and how to actually get through it, okay? So masking happens when you realize that you're different. You see your surroundings. Specifically, we'll talk about the workplace. You see the way your colleagues work, the way they're acting, and you want to try to fit in, right? Oftentimes, this is unconscious, right? We're not saying to ourselves, oh, I need to mask today, right? It's an unconscious thing, right? We're looking at how other people are doing it. We see how they're getting results, how they're being respected, or how people are, talking to them about them. And we want to change that, right? We also want that. And it often comes from studying people's behavior to see how they act and then copying that behavior, right? So, just like I mentioned, of like seeing how other people are behaving, seeing they're getting some sort of positive result, whether it's a lot of friends or, great projects that they're working on, praise from their team leader, whatever it is, and you want to copy that behavior, right? So, it's basically you trying to mold yourself into someone that looks, acts, and works like someone who's neurotypical, because again, this happens so often with neurodivergent individuals. So, this can show up in a lot of different ways, right? This masking. So, let's talk about how this can show up. People pleasing is a massive way that this can show up, right? Of trying to please other people, look to seeing what they want, saying yes to things you don't really want. Feeling unsure of how you fit in, right? Feeling like you're not sure where your place is, how to act, how to behave. Another way is not being able to verbalize your feelings and have honest conversations because you're worried that your version of honesty, your feelings, your emotions actually aren't going to be reciprocated or you're not going to get the support that you need. Burnout is a very common aspect of masking because you're literally trying so hard to be someone else that you're using up so much excess energy and becoming burned out. You may feel misunderstood, obviously, because you're not showing your true self. So people won't really get to know you, right? People who mask also may have a hard time making deeper connections and relationships with others, again, because you're trying to put this face on, this mask on. People can't really get to know the real you. It makes sense. And people who mask may not reach out to support from people, again, because they feel scared. They feel like, the neurotypical people don't ask for support, so they feel bad doing it. And they may feel less than and like you're not good enough, right? Like people who mask feel like they have to be someone else. So of course they may feel like, oh, well, I'm not good enough, but this version of me that I'm putting on is good enough, right? And also, I see a lot that people who mask react in ways they think they should react rather than how they actually want to. Again, because they're trying to portray what other people are doing as a way to fit in, right? So that comes up a lot. So although a lot of people do mask to a certain degree, I actually think it's normal to mask to some degree in the workplace, right? Like you have to behave a certain way with certain things in a workplace. You're not going to be the same way in the workplace during the day as you are, at a party at 3 a.m. on Saturday, right? That's obvious. So that's normal, right? But for many neurodivergent individuals, it will mean that they will become so tired and so lethargic energetically and completely burn out because they're constantly trying to be someone else and put a mask on. And like I mentioned, the more energy that you expel, right, trying to mask, it's literally going to drain your energy, and that's what causes so much burnout for neurodivergent individuals. You may also feel sensory and emotional overload, right? Because you're putting yourself in situations that you literally weren't meant to be in, right? You don't want to be in those situations. You just think you should. And so you're having this sensory and emotional overload. The goal is to not feel this way, right? The goal is to not mask you. We don't want you to feel burnt out, have that sensory overload. Like that's not going to help you, right? And while masking may help in the short term, you get that positive reinforcement. It it may make people like you. You may feel that sense of belonging initially. You might feel part of something, right? Initially, it may have more positives, but in the long term, it's going to cause you a lot of issues, physical, emotional, again, burnout, physical burnout, and these things will catch up with you. I truly believe that. And just from like a spiritual perspective, because I do want to add that in here, not just a tactical, is I truly believe, and if you read all the books and everything on this, like the only way that you can truly live a happy and fulfilled life is if you're living being your true and authentic self, period, right? So if you're masking constantly, it's going to catch up to you. Spiritually, you're not being your authentic self, right? And so that's what's going to cause you to feel that burnout and to not feel fulfilled in your life. You could mask and make $1 million and be wealthy and have a great job and people respect you. But if you're masking doing that and you're not being your true self, you're going to get burned out. You're going to feel upset. And that money and wealth isn't actually going to be worthy to you. It's not going to work, right? And again, this can come back to why we mask, right? Like we see society and we think we should behave a certain way. We think that having a certain amount of money or a certain job or being liked by certain people is going to give us the status, the money, the relationships we want. But if it's not authentic to you, it's not actually going to make you fulfilled in the long run, right? And here's the thing that I really want to bring home, right? If you're neurodivergent, all it means is that your brain works differently. And your brain working differently is not a bad thing. I need us to understand this, that your brain working differently is not a bad thing. In fact, and I will go to the grave with this, it is actually a gift. It is something beautiful that you can tap into, right? I work with so many neurodivergent clients and organizations, right, across the board with so many people. And I always, always, always encourage my neurodivergent individuals to tap into their gifts and strengths because at the end of the day, if you tap into your gift and strengths, or you're a leader and you support your team members tapping in to their gifts and strengths, you're going to be more successful as a result, period. I see this across the board, okay? Across the board. Neurodivergent individuals bring unique aspects and unique strengths to a workplace, to a team, to an organization, to a project, doesn't matter. And unless we're tapped into that, we're not using everyone's strengths to the maximum. And this again goes for not just neurodivergent individuals, also neurotypicals that have strengths. We need to play to everyone's strengths. But just for the sake of this, we're specifically talking about neurodivergent individuals. If you tap into your strengths, you're going to work better. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to be more in tune with your needs. Other people are going to be more in tune with their needs. And again, it's going to help the business as a whole, right? These are the benefits of that. It is extremely important. And masking doesn't help us get there. Masking doesn't help us look at your strengths and gifts because you're pretending to be or embodying something that isn't actually the authentic version of you. Okay. So masking is not ideal. So the question is how do we get out of masking or stop masking, or rather really start embodying our true selves. Okay. And I do want to mention that, of course, there's like a lot of deep seated trauma and underlying emotions. And if that's the case, like any sort of really bad trauma, big T trauma, anything like that, that's not what I'm talking about today, right? That would require therapy and other forms of support. So just want to mention, I'm not going to be talking about that specifically. That's a whole other topic of why people mask. I'm just talking about in the workplace when you mask trying to fit in. And I want to give some tips and tricks from a neurodivergent coach and consultant on what you can do to start tapping into your strengths. And it's going to be it's going to be mostly tactical, but I am going to have that spiritual element in it as well. So the first thing we can start doing is language shifting. So, language shifting is when we actually change the way we talk because what we say and what we think actually affects ourselves in our brain. Okay. So, how you talk to yourself is going to be extremely important. So, you need to change the way you talk about yourself. And the reason usually people mask is because they don't think they're good enough. They don't think the way their brain works is great. They're just not really in tune with themselves and how they feel, right? So, that's the first thing is we need to change the language. We're stopping the negative self-talk. We're not going to be putting ourselves down anymore. We're going to say how amazing we are and actually start talking like we believe it. Even if we don't believe it yet, we will believe it eventually, but you need to start talking about it, right? This is how we do the neuro reprogramming. The neurons in our brain are going to be reprogrammed. I talk about this all the time when we talk about manifesting or getting what we want. Your brain doesn't know the difference between reality and what's actually happening and what your brain is saying is happening, right? So, like, that's why we look at ourselves and we say, oh, I don't look good, but then really you do look good, right? But you're telling yourself you don't look good, so you're not going to look good, right? It's the same thing with our brains in this situation. If you say to yourself, oh, my brain works differently and it's so bad, well, yeah, that's what you're going to think then, rather than saying my brain is unique, my brain is special, and my brain helps me in everything that I'm doing. Affirmations are really good here as well with language shifting. But if you start to hear yourself saying negative things, or you start to see negative things that you're saying, or writing about yourself, or thinking, right? Change the language, okay? As soon as that negative thing comes out, you're going to say to yourself, oh, we're going to erase that. Now we're going to say something positive instead and reframe the thought, reframe the sentence to something more positive. This is going to be a major, major game changer. The second thing you can do is focus on your strengths. I see so many of my clients focus on their weaknesses. They come to me and say, I am burned out. They say, I can't focus for too long. They say, an hour meeting is too long for me, or I don't understand the notes, right? They focus on the negatives. And I'm like, okay, can we focus on your strengths? What are you actually good at? What do you love to do? Okay. I usually have my clients make a list and use that at work, right? Because once you make a list, you can understand maybe you're really good at prioritizing tasks. Maybe you're really good at communicating with customers, right? Whatever it is in your industry that you're great at, make a list of that. And then based on that, assuming you're in like a generally good position that's right for you, and some of my clients aren't, and we have to do a job search strategy and change jobs, but assuming you can make it work where you are now, ask for projects then accordingly, volunteer for tasks accordingly, or go for jobs where you can actually use your strengths. A great example is a client I had who was in a certain industry that she got a degree in. She thought she really enjoyed it. And when we actually got down to making her list, those jobs that she was actually applying for didn't fit what she wanted and what she was good at and her strengths. It didn't fit. So we had to revamp her job search strategy, revamp what we were looking at for her so that we could find jobs that were actually going to be supportive of her and what she wanted to do. The next thing is nervous system regulation. Okay, so many of my neurodivergent clients often have dysregulated nervous systems. This is from being burnt out, stressed, overstimulated. My recommendation is to look and pick at least one nervous system regulation tool that you can use to calm your nervous system, okay? Whether this is EFT tapping, whether this is certain nervous system regulation exercises like crossing your arms and moving your arms up and down on, the top of your arms like your hands. I have several ones on my TikTok page in case you guys are curious about that, but you can always DM me if you need a list as well. I have a menu card. It's a free document. So if you'd like that, just DM me Menu on Instagram or TikTok and I'll send it to you. It has a list of lots of nervous system regulation tools that you can use. But picking one is going to be super helpful because then you're going to feel, your brain is going to start to feel calmer and it's going to allow you to make more aligned decisions. Because the thing is when your nervous system is dysregulated, you're making decisions based on a dysregulated nervous system. So you see threats, I'm saying threats in quotes, like threats at work, much higher than you normally would. So it's going to cause you to mask even more, right? So the goal is to start regulating your nervous system so you can start to have a calmer nervous system and make decisions not from a threat point of view, but from a calm state. It's going to make a big, big difference. The next thing you should do is advocate for yourself. So whether it's at work, you need to advocate for yourself. And again, first you need to understand what actually you need and what works and what doesn't. And then you can start advocating for yourself. So maybe for you, too many meetings back to back is going to be too much. Or maybe you like to work every other day at home, right? Decide what it is that you need, understand what it is what you need, and ask for it. Literally go to your boss and say, listen, I love working here. I'm so happy, but I feel like I get overstimulated when I work in the office too many days in a row. Instead of having Monday and Friday home office, can I have Tuesday and Thursday at home office? Because then it'll switch to every other day for me and I can recharge on those days at home versus the days I'm in the office, right? That's a great example of something you can say. Advocate for yourself. And of course, if you advocate for yourself, and you're not getting the support that you need, then that needs to be a bigger conversation of whether or not that's an organization, a team, an environment that's actually going to be conducive to what you need. So advocating can actually really bring up a lot of information for you to see if that's a team and a manager that's going to support you or not. So something to consider. The next thing is setting boundaries. This goes hand in hand with advocating as well about setting boundaries with what doesn't work for you. Let's say you're overloaded with work. Say no to when they ask for more. Let's say you need a break between meetings and you've agreed with your manager that you're always going to take 5 minutes. Make sure to always end the meeting at 55 so you can have those 5 minutes regardless of what's going on, right? Let's say you need time to decide if you can help on a project or not and someone comes up to your desk and asks for help, right? Set the boundary and say, listen, I'm happy to help, but I need 20 minutes to think this over and then get back to you, right? Set the boundaries and stick to them. It is so important to stick to boundaries because if you don't stick to them, then they're not really boundaries, are they? And the last thing, which I find is so hard for people, and it was for me as well, right? I didn't do this well, but it's rest. It's rest. You need to rest, okay? There are 7 different types of rest and you need them all to recharge, right? And people who are masking often don't rest because they're constantly feeling like they need to be on to fit in, right? They're expelling that extra energy to mask, so they don't really rest. When in reality, resting is absolutely crucial for nervous system regulation, for recharging, and for minimizing burnout out of all the things we've talked about. So all these things really kind of interconnect with each other, but it's really, really important that you start implementing these things and that you can start making these changes because it's going to help you get away from masking, right? It's really going to help you. All of these things are going to help you in different ways. Try to implement 1 or 2 things and you will start to feel the mask come off. I think definitely the first part is really understanding you're worthy of not masking. That's really, really important. You don't need to mask. You're good just the way you are. You're perfect just the way you are. You're amazing just the way you are, right? And this goes for everybody. You're amazing the way you are. Let's look at your strengths rather than your weaknesses. And that's really going to help you. Okay. That's super important. So hopefully these tips help. Definitely, if you feel like you're masking, just start with one thing. Start implementing one thing and see how it goes. And if you need any more support on this and you want one-to-one support on masking, I help out many, many neurodivergent clients with this, then I still have one-to-one slots open and I've opened slots for August as well. So just email me. I'm going to put everything in the show notes or DM me on social media and we can chat about it. We can have a 20-minute complimentary call to make sure we're a good fit together and then we can work together. I would be so, so excited to work with you. All right. Well, I hope you all have an amazing, fabulous week. Sending you so much love, and I'll see you in the next episode. And if you love this episode, don't forget to follow the podcast and leave a review. And of course, you can follow me at Coach Deanna DeBolt on TikTok and Instagram. I'll catch you next time.